Hey, hi, howdy, hello. Let me adjust my brightness real quick so maybe it won't eat up so much of my battery. I hope you all are doing alright. I'm gonna play this one quick 19-minute video of Lori telling everybody to block people. It's pretty funny. And then we'll go to cryptids.
Let's listen. All right, lady, I'm not playing. I want everyone blocked. I'm not fucking doing it no more. Block them all. I don't care. I really don't. Block them all. Anybody else in here besides lady, block them all. Don't care. Thank you, baby. She's mad. She wants everybody blocked. Mine's block them all. What's wrong with your finger? You block them all. You guys are just nosy and just, yeah, that's just that. And I'm not doing it. So block them all. Get them all out. And if you know who not to. Any of the mods in here, block all of them. All of them. Anybody that comes in here, block them. I don't care who it is. Just block them. Get them out of here. We'll get rid of this shit one way or another. Thank you. I literally, all they do is literally just sit here. They're just fucking nosy. That's all at this point. I ain't got time for it. Thank you, girls.
Somebody's salty. He's like, I don't care who it is, block them all. You know why? Because she wasn't getting any money. Nobody would buy her McDonald's, so she's super mad. She's like, oh, block them all. I don't care who it is. You should block them all. Well, if you block them all, dumbass, you're not going to be able to get your donos if everyone's blocked. She's just like, block everybody. Like, okay, well then you're not going to have an audience if you keep doing that, dummy. But by all means, block everybody. You know?
So much. Right here, everybody, relax. good day. Is having a good day. Oh, hi, Bubbles. Yeah, I'm gonna take a nap. Yeah. Hi, baby. I will once. Yeah. I will. I had a nap today, sorry. Look, since I told you guys to block everybody, look, you see, pay attention. Pay attention to the processing of the process. Resources. They're all sitting in the window. Better stay there, you get blocked. Okay. I like my circles small. I don't like my numbers high or nothing like that. You know, I like them small. You know, like my circle. So that's, you know, I'm good with the little sissies I got. You know? You know what I mean, don't we? I mean, there's some other...
You do not like your circle small, you lying ass bitch. No, the reason your circle is small, Lori, is because you're a fucking lying piece of shit. It's not because you choose to have a small circle, I'll put it that way. You have a small circle because nobody fucking likes you. Listen to her make it sound like she has a small circle because she chooses to.
Good ones too, besides just my mods. You know what I mean? My mods are the top motherfucking dogs.
Your nods? Was that a Freudian slip? Did you just have a Freudian slip? Because she said her nods. Not her mods, but her nods. Oopsie, I don't think you meant to say that. Are you nodding the fuck out again? I mean, self-conscious about that? What's up? Hmm? Hmm? But she's sober, right? She's sober. Do any of you actually still believe that fucking bullshit? Like, because if you do, you need to go get your head checked. And I don't know what the hell that thing was outside my fucking window earlier, but that was creepy. Did you hear the sound of that thing, man? Like, that freaked me out. Bad. Like, it really creeped me out. Gandalf didn't like it either.
And then you go to the next notch of resources, and there are some good people on here. There really is, but they play good, and then next thing you know it's, oh boy, what the fuck? Chicken butt. It's all a game to them, and it's not to me, so block the ass, I don't give a fuck about it.
Notice how every time she brings up resources, quote unquote, the people who give her resources, aka money, she says are good people. The people who don't give her money or the people who are bad people suddenly because they no longer give her money. See, she places value on friendships by how much money they give her. She does not have one genuine friendship. She bases her friendships on monetary gain.
You know what I mean? Don't block cinnamon roll though. I love cinnamon roll. I work for her. I pay her. I pay cinnamon roll. $20 million. It is. And I'm glad I got you ladies. Just know people are trying to start shit. Just know that. They see how tight we are, and you know they gotta put their little noses in places that don't belong. We're always gonna be tight, and that's just that. And they're trying to break the breadwinner, which is the relationship of the Joneses.
Break the breadwinner? Oh, so one of the mods is your breadwinner? That's the one that kicks out all the money to you, because that's what a breadwinner is, and one who makes the money in the family. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. So, I was told something about maybe one of my mods doing something, and I'm gonna stand 10 toes down. I really don't believe that's true. I want to see a receipt. That's what I want to see. The date, the receipt. I don't believe any sort of that is even true. I've been soaking on it for a minute, and I can't swallow it. That's not true. And here they.
I highly doubt that there's anything your fucking whore ass can't swallow. I bet you swallow a lot, Lori. And it ain't words I'm talking about. You definitely run that fucking mouth of yours constantly. Hey, Tammy. She's gonna stand 10 toes down. I don't think she has 10 toes. I think she has 12 toes. And even if she had 10 toes, I don't give a fuck how many toes she stands down. She's still a fucking liar. She says she stands 10 toes down like that actually means something. It might actually mean something if she wasn't such a fucking liar. Like, but literally everything that comes out of her mouth is bullshit. She could tell me the sky was blue and I'd still have to go outside to look because that's how much I believe in her.
Starting their shit.
Well, Laura, you have to think to yourself, how many times have you had people that are mods and they stay for a few months and then they do something or they find out something and they're gone? So, maybe the people that you hear stuff from aren't always wrong.
And this is why I only got the 5 mods I got. You know? Wait, 1, 2, 3. Oh, 4. Sorry, I added one more. Oops. I don't think it is either. I really don't. But I didn't say nothing, just to, you guys, I didn't say nothing or nothing, so we're good. So I really had to think on it. Like, dude, they're trying really fucking hard, aren't they? This is like the 3rd time with this one. Like, what in the fuck? No, I can't swallow that to be true. I just can't. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to see a receipt or something. Some kind of, hi. Anybody needs cash? How much you need? I got 20 million right here. I got $1 million. How about 20 million? I can lay it right here. Bop, bop, bop. 20 million, baby. I love my mom too, sir. Okay, it's alright, baby. Hey, you're doing what I told you to do, babe. It's not a problem. No problem. We don't play games. We don't do nothing. Let's sit here and, be us, and then, and, all kinds of shit gets started because we're having fun, and, this and that, and, just always, just ain't got time for this shit. Not today. Not tomorrow.
Maybe you shouldn't be trusting people so much that you really don't know. I mean, think about it. How well can you possibly know these people?
I think I am going to take a nap.
You probably need to be talking to your own crew about that also, not just Lori. Because Andy, over there in y'all's crew, Andy's bringing random ass women from the internet around the kids. And thank God, Psycho Bunny is a good person. But they didn't know her, like, in real life. And then what about this WTF situation? Where all y'all supported her and, propped her up when she lied about everything. She fucking took the money she got because all y'all believed her bullshit. And she ran. So yeah, y'all need to be, not trusting everybody. But yet, my situation was documented by the government. And y'all couldn't say, leave her family alone. Mine was federally documented, and it made the fucking national news, and you still couldn't tell people to leave my fucking family alone. But WTF, scams a whole lot of people, pretending to be a victim. And that's okay. It's interesting. Apparently, Villain addressed the WTF situation. So anyway, on to the stuff we actually want to listen to. This is a story about Maine.
I arrived at Baxter State Park with my 3 friends on a sunny Friday afternoon. The drive had taken longer than expected.
This is a story about Maine. So it's especially creepy because this is basically in my backyard. So keep in mind while listening to this that this place is not far from me at all. So I probably shouldn't be listening to it because I'm going to creep myself out. But, y'all love tormenting me, so here we go.
Mostly because John insisted on stopping at every outdoor store along the way to check if they had the good gear, whatever that meant. I didn't mind the delays, though I was starting to question why I'd agreed to this trip in the first place. John was the most experienced outdoorsman among us and had planned the whole weekend. He jumped out of his SUV and stretched his arms wide, breathing deeply. "This is it, guys," he said, gesturing to the vast wilderness beyond the small parking area. "Real nature, not that tourist trap crap with designated fire pits and bathroom facilities every quarter mile." Paul laughed as he took his backpack from the trunk. "You say that like toilets are a bad thing. I'm still not sold on digging holes in the ground." "It's part of the experience," John insisted, already checking his map. "We're heading about 6 miles in, off the marked trails." I fixed my backpack, which was already digging into my shoulders. "Off trail? Is that allowed here?" "Technically, yes, but they don't encourage it," John said with a dismissive wave. "That's why we're parking at this secondary lot. Fewer rangers checking in." David, who hadn't talked much on the drive, looked excited. Man, I needed this. A weekend away from emails and Zoom calls before starting the new job. We set off on a marked trail that went through tall pine trees. The afternoon sun came through the branches, making spots of light on the forest floor. After about 2 hours of hiking, John went off the path, checking his compass. "This way," he said confidently. "There's an amazing clearing I found on my last trip." I checked my phone. No signal, as expected. "How much farther?" "Another hour, maybe less," John replied, already pushing ahead. The ground got harder to walk on as we left the main trail. Tree roots and rocks were everywhere, and bushes grew all around us. Paul talked nonstop about breaking up with his girlfriend after dating for 3 years. I'm telling you, I saw it coming, but not like that. Who breaks up with someone over a shared Netflix account dispute? "Maybe it wasn't about the Netflix," David suggested, carefully stepping over a fallen log. "It was the principle of the thing," Paul insisted. "She changed the password after I told her sister she could use it. My own account." I half listened, more focused on our surroundings. The forest seemed to close in around us the farther we went, trees growing taller and pressing closer together. The afternoon light was fading faster than I'd expected. Everything looked the same to me, endless pine trees and rocky ground. If John hadn't been leading, I would have been completely lost. By late afternoon, when my legs were aching and my shoulders hurt from my pack, John finally stopped at the edge of a small clearing. "Here we are," he announced triumphantly. "Home for the weekend." The clearing was maybe 50 feet across, roughly circular, and surrounded by thick pine trees that cut it off from the rest of the forest. A perfect place to camp or to get murdered without witnesses, my anxious brain helpfully supplied. This is really remote, I said, dropping my pack with relief. John grinned. That's the point, Mark. No weekend warriors, no families with screaming kids, just us in the wilderness. We set up our tents around the edge of the clearing. I noticed while hammering in stakes that the ground was really soft, almost spongy with all the old pine needles. It made me wonder how many people had actually been here before us. Not many, I guessed. Once the tents were up, John organized us to collect firewood. Only dead wood, he instructed. Nothing green. As I walked at the edge of the clearing picking up fallen branches, I realized how quiet it was. No distant highway sounds, no planes overhead, no voices of other hikers, not even many birds calling. Just the soft sound of pine needles under my boots and the occasional snap of a twig. The silence was weird, like it was too quiet. You're being paranoid, I mumbled to myself, gathering another armful of sticks. By the time darkness fell, we had a good campfire going in the center of the clearing. John had dug a proper fire pit lined with stones, and the flames made a warm circle of light that didn't quite reach the tree line. Beyond our little island of light, the forest was pitch black. We sat around the fire on logs John had placed as seats. The cooler between us held enough beer for the weekend, and we each grabbed one. The first sip tasted really good after the long hike. To David's new job, John said, raising his bottle. Software engineer at, what was it again? Meridian Tech, David said with a proud smile. Finally escaping the startup grind, actual health insurance and everything. Fancy, Paul teased. You'll be too good for us peasants soon. David shook his head. No way. These trips are sacred. Speaking of which, I still can't believe you talked Mark into coming. When was the last time you went camping? All eyes turned to me. I shrugged, staring into the fire. Boy Scouts, 6th grade maybe. And you hated every minute, John laughed. I remember your mom saying you came home and declared you were an indoor cat. I smiled even though I didn't want to. Still am. But you guys were so excited about this trip, I figured I'd give the great outdoors another shot. The fire crackled, sending sparks upward to meet the stars now visible in the patch of sky above our clearing. Paul launched into another story about his ex, while David talked about his plans for the extra money from his new job. John occasionally poked at the fire, adding more wood when the flames died down. I stayed mostly quiet, nursing my beer, checking out our surroundings. The darkness beyond our campfire seemed to get deeper as the night went on, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Each time I looked into the trees, I saw nothing but blackness. Then I heard it. A sound from somewhere in the forest. Not close, but clear enough to cut through the night air and Paul's ongoing relationship complaints. It was a strange noise, starting low like a growl, but rising to something between a howl and a scream before stopping suddenly. I sat up straight, looking at the others. Did you hear that? John nodded, but looked relaxed. Fox, probably.
Yeah, classic. I don't know what the fuck that was. But dude, ask Harry. It was creepy. It was fucking creepy, dude. It scared the shit out of me and my dog. Fucking hiccups. I don't know what it was, but the way it shrieked. But anyway, the title of this story is We Went Camping Deep in the Maine Woods. I'm the Only Survivor. Yeah, it was scary in Gandalf. That's how I know something was out there, because he reacted to it. But this story is about a camping trip in the woods in Maine. not far from here. Yeah. I probably don't need to listen to this because it is so close, but you guys love torturing me, so, I'll be right back.
Or maybe a coyote. They make weird sounds, especially during mating season. That didn't sound like any fox I've ever heard, I said. When's the last time you heard a fox outside of a YouTube video? John asked with a smirk. Paul laughed. He's got you there, Mark. I made a face, taking another sip of beer. Fair point. The conversation resumed, but I kept listening. About 20 minutes later, the sound came again, similar but not identical. This time it seemed to come from a different direction, and maybe closer. It started the same way, a low growl rising to that strange howl scream, but ended with a series of shorter vocalizations that made the hair on my arms stand up. David paused mid-sentence. Okay, that was weird. Just wildlife, John insisted, though he turned his head toward the sound. These woods are full of animals we don't see in the suburbs. What kind exactly? I asked. Because that doesn't sound like anything I've heard in nature documentaries. John shrugged. Could be a lot of things. Foxes, coyotes, even owls can make strange calls. Sometimes animals make odd noises when they're injured too. Great, Paul muttered. Wounded predators. That makes me feel much better. We all laughed, but it sounded forced. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, though the fire kept the clearing reasonably warm. As the evening went on, we heard the sound several more times. Each time it seemed to come from a different direction, but generally closer to our campsite. The noises were similar, but not identical, changing from a low growl to a high-pitched scream. Between these sounds, the forest was strangely quiet, as if all the normal nighttime animals had gone silent. John kept saying they were normal forest sounds, but I noticed he stopped walking away from the fire to get more wood, instead using what we had already collected nearby. When he needed to pee, he stayed at the edge of the clearing rather than going into the trees like he did earlier. Maybe we should take turns keeping watch tonight, I suggested after a particularly close-sounding cry made us all jump. John scoffed, but his laugh seemed hollow. Watch for what? Seriously, Mark, it's just animals. I don't know, David said slowly. That last one sounded different. Different how? Paul asked, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. David struggled to find the words. Like it was, I don't know, trying different sounds, testing them out. That's ridiculous, John said, but he didn't meet anyone's eyes. Animals don't test out sounds. I stared into the darkness beyond our fire. Some animals mimic, I said quietly. Certain birds, but that doesn't sound like a bird. Another cry broke through the night. This one so close it seemed to come from just beyond the tree line at the edge of our clearing. All four of us stood up instinctively, moving closer to the fire. Okay, John said, his voice lower now. Maybe we should keep the fire going all night. Take shifts to feed it. No one objected. Paul nervously suggested we tell ghost stories to lighten the mood, but nobody took him up on the offer. Instead, we sat in tense silence, listening to the woods around us. The sounds kept coming on and off, sometimes stopping for half an hour before starting again, each time seeming to come from a different spot around the edge of our clearing. It felt like we were being circled. It's just coincidence, I told myself, not believing it for a second. Animals don't methodically circle a campsite. They don't spend hours calling from different positions around a specific location. By midnight, the strange cries had increased in frequency. The last beer had been opened an hour ago, but nobody was really drinking anymore. We were all too focused on the sounds, too busy trying to pinpoint their locations, too occupied with silently willing the night to pass quickly. I think we should leave tomorrow, I said finally. Head back early. Under normal circumstances, John would have argued or teased me about being scared. Instead, he just nodded. Yeah, maybe. Let's see how things look in the morning. None of us wanted to go to our separate tents, so we stayed by the fire, adding more wood whenever it started to die down. No one was sleeping anyway. David talked about his new job some more, clearly trying to distract himself. Paul was unusually quiet. Another scream ripped through the darkness, this one different, longer, more sustained, and sounding almost hungry. It ended in a series of clicking sounds that couldn't possibly have come from any animal I knew. John finally took out his hunting knife, placing it on his knee. Just a precaution, he said when he caught me looking, in case it's a mountain lion or something. I didn't point out that no mountain lion made sounds like that. I just nodded and looked back into the fire, listening to the forest and wondering what was out there, watching us from the woods. Time passed as we huddled around the fire, each strange cry from the forest making us more nervous. John's digital watch showed it was nearly midnight. What started as occasional distant sounds had now become frequent and way too close. Each noise cut off our attempts at conversation, leaving us staring into the darkness beyond our small circle of firelight. I couldn't take it anymore. The constant tension was worse than whatever might be out there. We should pack up and hike back to the car, I said, breaking the uneasy silence that had fallen between screams. Now, while we can still somewhat see where we're going with the flashlights. John looked away from the tree line and stared at me like I was crazy. In the dark? Through 6 miles of off-trail woods? No way. We'd get lost in 10 minutes. Better lost than whatever's making those sounds finding us here, I argued. Paul shook his head. John's right, Mark. I don't like those noises either, but stumbling around in pitch-black forest is asking for trouble. I looked to David for support, but he just gave me an apologetic shrug. We should stick together. Morning's only a few hours away. I noticed his hands shaking as he poked at the fire, sending sparks up into the night. He wasn't as confident as he sounded. A few hours is a long time, I muttered, pulling my jacket tighter. It got super cold all of a sudden. We could see our breath in the firelight. Maine woods get cold at night in early fall, but this was weird, like an icy chill out of nowhere. David added more wood to the fire. Anyone else feel that? It just got really cold. We all nodded, moving closer to the fire. Weather change, John said, but his voice lacked conviction. The crack of a branch snapping just beyond the clearing made us all jump. Paul let out a startled yelp that he quickly tried to cover with a cough. John took his hunting knife from the log and stood up. He pulled his flashlight from his pocket and pointed it toward the sound, the light shining between the trees. For a split second, the light caught something pale moving between the pines, about 30 yards in. It was tall, much taller than a person, and unnaturally thin. It disappeared from view almost instantly, but that glimpse terrified me. What was that? Paul whispered, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Not sure, John replied, scanning the area with his flashlight. Too tall and thin for a deer. Definitely not a bear. No one spoke the obvious question. What else could it be? John sat back down but held onto his knife, putting the flashlight next to him so he could grab it quickly. Maybe we should take turns sleeping, Paul suggested, his voice higher than normal. Like 2 keep watch while 2 sleep, then switch? None of us moved toward our tents. The idea of being inside a thin nylon shelter suddenly seemed worse than staying in the open where at least we could see danger coming. I'm not tired, David said. Me neither, I added quickly. John just shook his head, eyes still fixed on the spot where he'd seen the pale figure. Another scream tore through the night, so close it felt like it was right at the edge of our clearing. This one was different from the others, longer, with changes in tone that sounded almost like words. It started as a deep growl that rose in pitch until it was a high-pitched wail that made my skin crawl. It sounded almost human, but wrong, distorted, like a person's scream played through damaged speakers. I watched John's face as he heard it, saw the exact moment when he stopped doubting. His eyes widened, and he gripped his knife tighter until his knuckles turned white. "That's not an animal," he whispered, all his earlier confidence gone. "What do you think it is?" Paul asked, his voice trembling. John just shook his head, not taking his eyes off the tree line. We moved closer together in a tight circle around the fire. The flames seemed like our only protection against whatever was in the darkness. Each of us had found something to use. John with his hunting knife, Paul with the small camp axe he'd used to split kindling, David holding his metal flashlight like a club. I dug through my pack and found the can of bear spray I'd brought because my sister Sarah insisted. Bear spray works on anything with eyes and a respiratory system, I remembered her saying when she'd handed it to me before the trip. I hoped she was right. The thing outside our camp kept moving, with sounds giving it away. The soft crunch of pine needles, the occasional snap of a twig, the rustle of branches. It was circling our clearing, I realized after listening to the noises for several minutes. Moving around the edge in a pattern, never coming closer, but never moving away. "It's circling us," David said, putting words to what we were all thinking. "Animals circle when they're hunting," Paul whispered. "Or when they're studying their prey," I added, immediately wishing I hadn't. The steady movement kept going. 15 minutes went by as the creature finished what looked like its third full loop around our campsite. It wasn't just randomly walking around. This thing had a plan. It moved deliberately, stopping here and there like it was checking us out from different spots. "Why doesn't it just leave or attack?" David asked, his voice barely audible. "Why just circle?" None of us had an answer. I thought about the stories I'd read of predators wearing down their prey, making them exhausted before attacking. Or maybe it was just waiting for us to fall asleep. "We need to stay awake," I said. "All of us all night." No one argued. John stood again, raising his flashlight and knife. "Hey!" he shouted into the darkness. "We see you out there! Go away!" His voice bounced through the trees, then faded to nothing. The forest went completely silent. No rustling, no animal sounds. Not even the normal chorus of night insects that had been barely audible during our conversation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a response came. Not a scream this time, but a low, rumbling sound that shook the ground beneath our feet. It got louder until it surrounded us, coming from everywhere at once. Paul dropped the axe, clapping his hands over his ears. "What the hell is that?" The sound stopped suddenly, leaving a ringing silence.
Oh, hell no. My ass would have gotten up and I would have walked on top of trees. And that's not red, honey. That's like neon pink. I got a pink kitten. Never mind. I'm not finishing that statement. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. That's all I'm gonna say. It's like a fluorescent pink.
"It understood you," I said to John, my mouth dry. "It heard you yell, and it answered." John slowly lowered his knife, his face pale in the firelight. "That's not possible." But the impossible was happening all around us. The temperature had dropped again, cold enough now that I could see frost forming on the pine needles at the edge of our firelight. My fingers were going numb, even though I was right next to the fire. "Feed the fire," John said suddenly, his voice taking on a new urgency. "Make it bigger." We hurried to add more wood, building the fire higher than was really safe. The bigger flames pushed back the darkness, making our circle of light spread out by several feet. For a moment, I felt relieved as we could see more around us. Then I realized that a bigger fire just let us see more of the forest. It didn't actually protect us from what was in it. Another branch snapped, closer this time. All four of us turned toward the sound, weapons raised. In the brighter firelight, I could just make out the lowest branches of the pines at the edge of the clearing shaking slightly, as if something had brushed against them. I think it's testing the boundaries, I said, seeing how close it can get before we notice. We should make noise, Paul suggested, his voice cracking. Scare it off. I don't think noise is going to scare this thing, David replied, tightening his grip on the flashlight. The creature moved again, circling back to the spot where John had first seen it. This time, it made a bunch of short, sharp cries that sounded like creepy, mocking laughter. I felt the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stand up. Whatever was out there wasn't just an animal. It was intelligent. It was playing with us. What do we do? Paul asked, looking frantically between us. We can't just sit here all night waiting for it to make a move. That's exactly what we're going to do, John said firmly. We stay together, keep the fire going, and watch each other's backs. When the sun comes up, we pack and leave. Fast. It was the first time John had acknowledged we should cut the trip short, and the admission sent a fresh wave of fear through me. If John was scared, we were in serious trouble. Another scream cut through the night, this one directly behind me. I spun around, raising the bear spray. Nothing was there. Did you see anything? I asked, my voice shaking. No, David said, but I heard it right there too. It can throw its voice, John said in disbelief, or it's moving faster than we can track. Neither option was comforting. We moved our positions, sitting back to back in pairs to cover all approaches to the fire. I ended up facing the north side of the clearing with David at my back. John and Paul watched the other directions. The fire roared between us, our only real comfort in the increasingly hostile night. Time crawled by. Every snap, rustle, or cry made us flinch. I found myself starting to see shapes in the darkness that disappeared when I looked directly at them. Tall, thin figures just beyond the firelight that vanished when I looked right at them. Is anyone else seeing things? I asked quietly. Like what? John asked sharply. Shapes. Just for a second, then they're gone. Paul nodded. I thought I was imagining it. It's the fear and firelight playing tricks, John said, but he didn't sound convinced. David remained silent, but I could feel the tension in his back pressed against mine. The creature kept going around our camp, but it was moving differently now. It would stop for longer in certain spots, completely still and quiet, then move quickly to another spot. Each time it moved fast, we'd lose track of where it was until it made another sound. It's learning, I whispered. Adapting. No one disagreed. The temperature continued to drop. Our breath came out in clouds that lingered in the still air. My hands were so cold I wondered if I could even press the trigger on the bear spray if I needed to. My watch says it's 1:30, John announced quietly. Less than 5 hours until dawn. 5 hours felt like an eternity. I wasn't sure we could maintain this level of vigilance and fear for that long without breaking. Already my eyes burned from staring into the darkness, and my muscles ached from tension. Another branch snapped, followed by a strange clicking sound that reminded me of insects, but much louder, much closer. What was that? Paul hissed. I don't know, John replied. But it's new. The clicking continued, moving slowly around the edge of our clearing. When it reached the point directly in front of me, it stopped. I strained my eyes, trying to see into the darkness beyond the firelight. For a brief moment, I thought I saw something. A face, or something like a face, pale and long, with features that seemed to move and change as I looked at them. Then it was gone, leaving me wondering if it had been there at all. "Did you see that?" I asked David over my shoulder. "See what?" he replied, his voice tight with fear. I didn't answer. Maybe it was better not to describe it. The clicking started again, moving away from me and going around the circle. It went all the way around and then stopped. The silence after was even worse than the noise. It felt heavy and tense. Then I heard something new, a soft, rhythmic thumping that I didn't recognize at first. Footsteps. Slow footsteps coming toward our clearing. "It's coming closer," Paul whispered. We all turned toward the sound, our makeshift weapons raised. The footsteps stopped just outside our fire's light. I could feel someone watching us. "Stay together," John said, his voice barely audible. "Whatever happens, stay together." The creature moved again, not walking this time, but changed position so quickly the movement was almost impossible to track. One moment it was directly east of us, the next it was to the north, then west, then south, circling us with impossible speed. How was it moving that fast? David's voice shook with disbelief. None of us had an answer. The rapid movement stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The forest fell silent again, but the feeling of being watched intensified. Whatever it was closer now, just beyond the light. Waiting. I looked into the dark forest, trying to see past our fire. The clicking noise had suddenly stopped, and everything was quiet except for the fire crackling behind me. I held my can of bear spray while my back was against David's as we watched for danger. The attack came without warning. John made a weird cry that sounded nothing like a person. I turned around quickly, almost falling as I looked away from where I was keeping watch. My brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. John was hanging in the air, his feet about a foot off the ground. The thing holding him was over 7 feet tall with arms and legs that were way too long for its body. Its face. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It looked pulled and wrong, like someone had stretched human features out of shape. The skin was a sickly pale color that didn't catch any light from our fire. "John!" Paul screamed. Everything happened too fast. The creature's arm moved in a way arms shouldn't be able to move, stretching toward John's chest. Its hand ended in long, curved claws that tore through John's jacket and into his body easily. Blood sprayed across the campsite, droplets hissing as they hit the fire. John's body went completely limp, his knife falling from his hand to the ground. Paul screamed and ran forward, swinging the camp axe with all his strength. The blade hit the creature's shoulder, cutting into the pale flesh. The thing didn't make a sound, no cry of pain, no reaction at all. It simply turned its head toward Paul, the movement smooth but wrong, like its neck had too many joints. "Run!" David yelled, grabbing my arm so hard it hurt. "Mark, we have to run!" I couldn't move. My body wouldn't work as I watched the creature drop John's lifeless body. It moved toward Paul so fast I could barely see it, getting to him in less than a second. Paul tried to back away, but the creature caught him by the throat, lifting him like he weighed nothing. David yanked on my arm again, pulling me backward toward the trees. I finally could move my feet, and I stumbled away from the fire, still staring at the horrible scene. The creature's other arm reached toward Paul's midsection, claws digging deep. Paul's scream cut through the night, a sound so painful I knew I'd never forget it. Blood poured from the wounds as the creature began to tear. "Go, Mark, go now!" David shoved me hard toward the darkness of the forest. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a root. David turned away from me, facing the creature with his flashlight raised like a club. "David, no!" I screamed. My friend looked back at me one last time. "Run! Don't stop!" The creature dropped what remained of Paul and moved toward us, covering the distance in 2 impossible strides. David swung the flashlight, the heavy metal connecting with the creature's chest. The impact barely slowed it down. With a casual swipe of its arm, it knocked David to the ground. The thing stood over him, its limbs bending at angles that made my stomach turn. Something finally broke through my paralysis. Pure terror jolted through my body, and I turned and ran blindly into the forest. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the bushes, away from the firelight, away from my friends, away from that thing. Behind me, David's screams carried through the trees, desperate, agonized sounds that abruptly stopped, leaving only the crashing of...
You know what's fucked up? These markers that I'm using are not regular markers. So they're a little more difficult to use because if I make a mistake with these, I can't fucking fix them. Because they're not regular markers, they're paint markers. So it's actual paint. So if you fuck up with these, you're not fixing it. Did you hear that fucking noise that was going on earlier? That weird screeching noise? I never did figure out what the hell that was. I'm not real sure I want to know. Frankly, not listening to this, probably I don't want to know. All I know is that whatever it was, Gandalf did not like. And Tammy, you want to talk about nightmares? This whole story is about the woods here in Maine.
My own movement through the forest. I ran without direction or thought. My lungs burned with each gasping breath. I tripped over roots and rocks, falling hard only to scramble back up and keep running. Blood ran down my face from where branches had cut my skin, mixing with tears I hadn't realized I was crying. Trees stood tall around me, indistinguishable in the darkness. I had no flashlight, no sense of direction. The only thing that mattered was distance, getting as far away from the campsite as possible. My foot caught on something, a fallen log or large root, and I went down hard, landing face first in the cold forest floor. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs, leaving me gasping and disoriented. For a moment I lay there, unable to move, listening intently for any sound of pursuit. The forest was quiet. No screams, no unnatural movements in the darkness, just the soft rustle of wind through pine needles and my own ragged breathing. I pushed myself up, wiping dirt and blood from my face with a shaking hand. My pack was gone, lost in the initial panic or torn off by branches during my flight. With it went my water, food, flashlight, and extra clothing. All I had was my phone in my pocket and the bear spray, both useless against what had attacked us. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. I didn't wait to see what caused it. I scrambled to my feet and took off again, ignoring the pain shooting through my ankle and the stitch burning in my side. Pure terror drove me forward, deeper into the dark forest. John, Paul, David, the images of their deaths played on repeat in my mind. The impossible creature with its wrong movements and emotionless efficiency. The blood. So much blood. I ran until my legs refused to carry me anymore, finally collapsing against the base of a large pine tree. My chest heaved with each painful breath. My clothes were soaked with sweat despite the cold air. Every muscle screamed in protest. Huddled against the tree, I pulled my knees to my chest and tried to make sense of what had happened. The creature defied explanation. Nothing in nature moved that way or looked like that. The way its limbs extended, the way it showed no reaction to Paul's axe. It wasn't natural. It wasn't anything I could understand. My friends were dead. The reality of it hit me like a physical blow. They were dead, torn apart by something impossible, while I had run away. Guilt mixed with the terror in my gut, making me nauseous. A sound cut through the night. That same unnatural cry I'd been hearing all evening. But now, from somewhere behind me, it was following. Hunting. I pushed myself up on trembling legs and started moving again, slower now, but still driven by the need to escape. I had no idea which direction I was heading. The dense tree cover above blocked any view of the stars that might have helped me navigate. All I could do was keep the sounds of pursuit behind me and pray that dawn would come soon. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Each tree looked identical to the last, each shadow potentially hiding the creature. My foot caught in a tangle of bushes, and I went down again, rolling down a slight incline before coming to rest in a small depression in the earth. I lay there, too exhausted to move immediately, listening to the sounds of the forest around me. The creature's cries had stopped, or perhaps I'd put enough distance between us that I could no longer hear them. My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen lit up, painfully bright in the darkness. Still no signal, as expected, this deep in the park. The time showed 3:17 a.m., hours until dawn. I tucked the phone away and forced myself to my feet once more. I couldn't stay in one place. I had to keep moving. Had to find my way out of...
Anyway. I think I'm gonna call it a night. I finished that one picture with the Tigger on it. And I think I'm gonna go to bed. I gotta work tomorrow. So, love you guys. Tomorrow's probably gonna be Karen's. I think we'll cover Karen's tomorrow. But I'm pooped. So, I love you guys. Bye.